It is 6 p.m., March 20th, regular assembly meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Jeff.
Here.
Bob.
Here.
David.
Here.
Donna. Here. Thomas.
Here.
Mark.
Here.
Scott.
Here.
Thank
Okay,
you.
we have a full assembly tonight with one assembly member, Member Kinsinger zooming in. It's now time for the voluntary pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from March 6th, 2023. I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, those meeting minutes are approved. Tonight's agenda, amendment and approval of tonight's meeting agenda. If there are no proposed amendments, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll move forward with the agenda as presented to us this evening. There's one public hearing tonight, and that is a public hearing for ordinance 2023-03. This is an ordinance proposing amendments to the home rule charter of the Petersburg Borough to allow borough employees, including employees working at the Petersburg Medical Center and Petersburg School District, to serve on certain borough boards and commissions, and directing that the proposed charter amendments be submitted to the qualified voters of the borough. If there's any public testimony in this public hearing, please step forward and state your name and which we represent. Is there anyone zooming in?
There is no one.
Not for this. Okay, thank you. So that public hearing is closed. No bid awards this evening. That brings us to item 7, persons to be heard related to items on today's agenda. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on items on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to item 8, persons to be heard on items unrelated to tonight's agenda. State your name and who you represent.
Hello, my name is Aaron Hankins. I'm the fire director at the fire department. I just wanted to announce that there will be a test of the Petersburg siren system following the radios test of the tsunami warning system on March 29th, 2023, or March 29th, 2023. The test times are as follows. The tsunami warning test for radio and television will occur approximately about 10:15. And then following that at noon, we will test the siren system. KFSK will be broadcasting notices up to this date, and I will send out a code red notification at 9:45, also alerting the public that will be a test only. These tests will be canceled in the event of significant seismic activity. Please call the fire department with questions at 772-3355. Or you can contact KFSK at 772-3808.
Okay, thank you for that update. We'll know what all the noise is about. Anyone else with items unrelated to tonight's agenda? Seeing none. That brings us to boards, commission, and committee reports. There are none tonight. One item on the consent agenda, and that's a request for a renewal of the GCI lease. GCI wishes to continue their land lease with the borough for the period of March 1st, 2023 through February 28th, 2028 at the rate of $4,540 per year. I'd entertain a motion to approve this request.
So moved.
Second.
Second, is there any discussion? Member Fine Walsh.
Mr. Mayor, just a quick question, maybe also for people listening. Could we get a little information just on what the lease is, where it is, what it's for?
Is this the lease on 8th Street where they have their fiber optic building right by the Lighthouse Assembly of God Church?
Yes, sir. That's exactly what it is. It's their facility that provides the fiber optics leaving the island. It amounts to.
So, Member Marsh?
Thank you. Kind of as a follow-up on that, would, through the mayor, Mr. Giesbrecht, would you delineate how we came up with this $4,540 per year? It made sense in the packet, but maybe the listening audience would like some clarification.
I can try it. It's actually appraised. We have all the leases appraised and they set a value based on what the property is and how it's being used. And then that is passed on to whoever's leasing it. And then by the way, we do come back and reappraise those every 5 years as well.
Member Fine Walsh, did that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. Yeah.
Okay. So if there's no other input of the clerk, call the roll.
Scott,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that lease with GCI is renewed. Excuse me, report of other officers is item 11. And item A under there is Appraisal Company of Alaska Assessment Report. Mike Renfro and Martin's, I hope you pronounce your name right, Onskoulas. With the Appraisal Company of Alaska will provide an estimated tax assessment report for the Petersburg Borough. So I just thought it would be nice to have them give a little update because it looks like property assessments are going up this year. So the floor is yours. Thank you for attending.
Thank you. This is Mike Renfro. Martins is also on the line. Martins has put together the property tax workshop report that should be in front of you. Not on the line tonight is Arnie Erickson, which is also one of the assessors on my staff. Tonight, we're going to talk about briefly the real estate market overview, what the market trends are in real estate, our sales ratio study. Martins will talk about supply and demand, construction costs. We'll also go over the valuation process of what we've done for field and in the office, a general brief overview on how appeals are handled and the Board of Equalization hearing. The real estate market overview, after we've done all of our work this year, raised the values, the sales ratio study. And the sales ratio study is the relationship of the sales price to the assessed value. So what we're saying that after we analyzed 75 sales, of which 40 were vacant land and 35 improved properties, that our current sales ratio, after we did all of that prior to the BOE, is 81.34%. Vacant land, we're still low, appears to be low as we've raised vacant land. We're at 75.22%. Overall, just using residential properties, we're at 83.8%. This is about typical for the market right now. It seems like with rising property values or property sales, we're continually chasing the market or following the market as property values increase. For the balance of the report, Martins will go over the graphs and the charts that are followed in the rest of the report. Martins, you can take over from here.
Yes, thank you, Mike. I'll try to be really quick, and if you have any questions at the end, I'll be happy to answer those. This is the graph I put together from all the end of the year state reports that we do every, I think it's June, July. So the little red line at the bottom, it's median property value in the Petersburg, starting from 2014 and then all the way till last year. And then the line, kind of bright blue, is median property values or sales price within the whole country. As you can see, the Petersburg is a little bit below that, but the trend keeps going up. And in the next slide, it's a brief value change from 2014 to 2022. And it's a smaller community, so depending on the year, so one year there might be properties that are worth more, they would be selling for higher. So property median sales price would accordingly go up. And then next year it might be a little bit lower, but average in past 8 years, we have experienced and seeing around 3% increase in property sales prices, with a little bit larger increase last year and year before. And then the national average is the same. It's 5.75, with quite a bit larger in past 3 years. These are kind of the three things that really drive the market value for the properties. It's mainly supply demand. We have more buyers, more people looking for homes, and there's the supply is less, so it's really a seller's market. And people are willing to pay more and bid more for homes. And then the construction thing is construction costs is another cost that increase the value that raises the value for the homes. It's maybe either again, depending on what kind of home you're building, at some point the cost actually to build is getting higher if you have to buy land, install septic and water, level the lot sometimes on and also the vacant land costs again depends where you look for the land. If it's a level lot, either waterfront or with easy access where you don't have to put the access road in, those costs, they've gone up also a lot in the past couple of years. This is included in your package as well, so I'm not going to spend too much time. These are the increases from 2022 that we saw across the state. Anchorage did see quite a bit of increase. Fairbanks was larger increase. Juneau, same thing. Juneau actually this year I just read is going up quite a bit. Alaska, Nome, pretty much every community 2022 saw an increase. And then the same thing for this year. Valdez is increasing. Anchorage is a little bit less increase than what it was last year. Then we have Petersburg, which will go a little bit more in the details in next slide. Alaska, interesting market. There was not much change this year. It's been pretty steady increase for past couple of years. So this year there wasn't any increase at all. And then a slight increase for both Nome and Cordova as well. So 2023 updates. As every year, we do our field work portion of assessment work, which is ongoing recheck items. It's ongoing recheck items is construction in progress, any other reviews that we need to do in the field. Then the next stage is we look at all the building permits. And the reason for the value change, the way we value properties is everything's been run by the cost approach, and then that cost approach is being adjusted based on sales. And sales is basically what what the buyers are paying for, and based on that we're doing our adjustments, increase in the value. And this year we did have increase for residential, which was 20%. It might sound a lot, but we'll take a look at the next slide. And actually, it's not 20%, it's less than that, depending on a couple things. Vacant land within the city, it went up by 12%. And outside the city, 20%. And Point Agassiz, we revalued all land there. So how much did the properties went up? As we can see, on the left side, where you see numbers 200, 400, 600, those are the number of properties. And then on the bottom, you have percentage. And most of the properties did see increase between 10% to 12%. Those are 974. And then all the way to 17 until 19%, 19 to 20%, that range, we have 620, 322 properties. And actually, these 621, 322 properties, those are mostly vacant land that went up by that much. So all the residential increase was anywhere between, for most of the properties, anywhere between 10 to 20%. And then a couple higher increases between 30, 31%. those were also vacant land or some construction that we picked up or something else that drove the increase more. And here's a similar graph. Previously, we looked at the percentage increase, how much increased by percent. In this one, we can see how much it increased actually in the dollar amount, which that's what everybody cares about, to see how much will my taxes go up or how much will my assessment increase this year. Again, 1,000, almost 1,200 properties went up by 100 to 5,200, which we can see the bottom line is amount, dollar amount, and the line on the left side, vertical line, is number of properties. So majority of properties, as we can see, went up to 5,200, then up to 10,000, and all the way until some properties we have some exemptions that went up by even 76,000, but those are smaller number of properties. So I would say majority of properties still went up by less than $50,000. And again, we are expecting probably higher number of appeals than usually. As of now, we have received 20 appeals, which in most of the cases, most of the appeals come in towards the end of the appeal period. And a couple of things that are main concerns that are always on the appeals is no improvements made to the property. Value went up. Value should increase, but sometimes it's maybe a little too high of an increase. Some property owners are not aware of market changes. And then some physical damage. Sometimes you have, either water or heavy snow or wind. Concern sometimes the local economy is not doing too well, so the values therefore should not go up. One of the questions we always have, where's all the money going? Where's the tax money going? And it's sometimes it just, it's not fair that the values are increasing. And then Board of Equalization, just briefly, ideally, when property owners are appealing, we are always looking for something that we can adjust the value on, something that's reasonable, either sales that they have that they can compare with the neighbors, or if they can see that maybe there's some damage to the property, but if the appeal just says, hey, no changes, it's really hard to do anything for us to adjust the values. And three things that property owners can use for their defense is, and these are all from state statutes, it's either excessive, which basically means that your property is valued higher. That's what similar properties are selling for. Unequal is something that the property is the same class, but it's and there's no basis why would the value be different than property that's similar than yours. And improper, it's basically that assessor has used just the wrong way on how to value your property. And conclusion is, we're still seeing the values are increasing and increasing as of today. Actually, Petersburg is increasing less that we have noticed than other communities across the state. And it's important to know that we are not creating the value. We are just reporting to you, to the city, what the market is doing, and it's sellers and buyers. They're creating the value with the transaction in the market, how much they're paying for the properties, and our job is to make sure that we comply with the state statutes, and we report to the city, and adjust values based on based on what the market does, and so we can meet requirements by the state statutes, which is to assess properties close to 100%, which would be the full market value, and that's the main reason why there was adjustment needed for this year, so we can get closer to what the most properties would sell for, and that's all what I have.
Thank you, Martins.
Are there any questions? Or, excuse me, continue.
Well, that's fine. I was just going to say thanks, Martins. We got a little bit behind the curve. Everybody blames COVID. I'd hate to get off the bandwagon by not doing that. As the assessor in a lot of communities, I honestly did not think that property values would go up as much as they did during the period of COVID, with people staying at home and a lot of people out of work. It's not every day that you sit down and admit that you miss the market a little bit by not increasing the property values. I don't remember my economics professor telling me that as he talked about supply and demand, that he had a relationship to COVID during those classes. It's interesting to me that the trend for increasing property values greater than what we typically see is not limited to Petersburg or the other small communities in the state of Alaska. It seems to be in almost every market that I've looked at, we've seen rapid increases in values this last couple of years. And as Martin's pointed out, we don't go out and create the value. It's the market that determines what the value is. And what we're trying to do as assessors is report the relationship of those sales prices to the assessed value to meet the requirements of the municipal code and the state statutes.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of the Member Lynn?
Yes. Mike, this is Bob Lynn. I've got a couple questions for you. Back on your sales ratio study on one page, you showed that you had 75 sales, 40 vacant, 35 improved. Are those are all from our area here, from our borough? Is the first question. And is that average, above average for our area?
You know, Bob, I can answer part of that question, and Martin will answer the other half. Yes, all of the sales that are in there are sales that we were able to confirm, you know, talking to people or getting other sources or looking at deeds of trust or whatever, and they are all within the Petersburg borough. And Martin's can tell you how many sales, how it related to prior years.
Yeah, actually, I was not ready for this question. I can definitely get back to you, and I can let you know how it compares to what we had in past couple of years. Overall, for other communities, we have experienced that this year was definitely more sales or not really sales, just property related transactions. So I can get back to you with this one to you know, put together something for you for past couple of years to show how this year compares to past couple of years.
That would be good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Member Mucci?
Yeah, thank you. On the same question, on the same page that Assemblymember Lynn was talking about, I think it's page 16, it talks about real estate market overviews. Can you explain what those percentages mean, like the current sales ratio, 81.3? Can you explain what those three headings are, what they refer to?
Martins, do you want to do that, or would you like me to do it?
Sure, you can go ahead. I'll add something.
as I'm coming back to the page. The sales ratio, as I talked about it earlier, the sales ratio is the relationship of the sale price to the assessed value. And that's what we refer to as the sales ratio. And what we do is we're doing what we call mass appraisal, which is a large number of properties with a limited amount of information to come up with some sort of matrix that will allow us to take that information and spread that information sales-wise and the relationship to the assessed value over the whole borough. Now, we break it down in various categories. We've got vacant land, waterfront land. We've got homes in town, homes out of town, homes and properties in the rural area around the borough. And we look at all of those separate areas and look at the sales price, how they compare to the assessed value to come up with our ratio. In addition to that, how we put it all together is we have what we call a Marshall and Swift valuation manual. And it's a national value manual that was put together nationally. Or I'm having a blank here. I can't remember the name of the company. And what you do with that manual is you're able to adjust those average prices within the manual by a multiplier that comes out of the information that we get from the sales and the assessed value. So that when we're valuing properties, we're using the manual. If we've got houses that are all similar in age and style, we use the manual generated numbers times a multiplier for Petersburg, and it changes by community with different information to try to average those values out throughout the community and the borough. There might, when Martin's is putting together his information for you on the percent change through the years for the last couple of years, there, I believe that there's a better explanation of the sales ratio within Alaska taxable. I'll put together that and send it with Martin's information so that you can have it. My explanation is probably not as detailed and as clear as it would be with that printout in Alaska taxable.
Thank you.
I hope that sort of
Mike-
answers your question.
Any other questions? Manager Giesbrecht.
Mike, this is Steve. How you doing?
I'm fine, Steve.
Is it correct to say that the sales ratio of 81% says the assessed values you're putting forward are 81% of what the sales prices would be?
Yes, we're dealing with averages, and on average, and I don't know what we call the COD is, but on average of all the sales that we've got compared to all of the assessed values for those sales, after we've made all our changes and raised everything, we're still at 81% on average of the typical sales price.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Member Marsh.
Thank you. So I have a couple of questions. One is the Alaska Appraisal Company, the organization that appraises the real estate market throughout the state? And secondly, is Petersburg valuation based on just Petersburg sales ratio study or the real estate market just in Petersburg? Or are we lumped in a pool with the other communities throughout the state that your company assesses? And then how is that divvied out? If you would explain that, that would be awesome.
I can start out, and if I miss anything, Martins can follow up. The sales that we use for the sales ratio are all within the Petersburg borough. So we're not taking Anchorage sales or Fairbanks sales or Unalaska sales and comparing them to come up with a sales ratio for Petersburg. All of the information that we get comes from Petersburg. Your question about Appraisal Company of Alaska, I assume you're asking who are we, what do we do? I can put together a resume to go with the other information that Martins and I will be sending. In general, the Appraisal Company is a privately owned valuation company based in Anchorage, Alaska. I'm Mike Renfro, I'm the sole owner. A major portion of the work that the Appraisal Company does is municipal assessment work, and we work for 11 communities throughout the state, all the way from the North Slope to Unalaska to Wrangell and Petersburg and a lot of places in between. Because we have so many municipal clients, the appraisal company is able to maintain a professional staff that is focused entirely on municipal assessments and following the market within the communities. In addition, the appraisal company, we do residential appraisal reports primarily for lenders. And we generally only do those appraisal reports in communities that we do not do the assessments in. So there's no conflict of interest between the fee appraiser and the assessor. And so we're actually out doing appraisals in Kotzebue and other communities throughout the state that we really don't do a lot of assessing work in. If we do appraisals in communities we do the assessing in, the appraiser that is doing the fee appraisals is not associated with the portion of our staff that does assessments. But if you like, I can also include a resume on appraisal company.
Yeah, whatever information you'd like to send. Any other questions? Yeah. Member Newman.
Hey, Mike, how you doing? You hear me, Mike?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Okay, the question is, I'm looking at these percentages. And so I see Petersburg at average around 14%, 18% residential. And it says 12% and then 20%, or maybe it's 12 to 20% for land. So those percentages are based on, like, that's the actual sales had increased by 18% for residential properties. Is that correct?
Yes, the changes are based on actual sales. And it's, Scott, it's like I said earlier, we follow the market. You know, we're not on top of the market because it takes a time to confirm all the sales and the information as it comes up. So we're following the market as the sales increase. And again, Alaska is not a full disclosure state. So it's just on those sales that we're able to confirm where we can get the information. And we're comparing those sales prices to our assessed values to see what the averages are. And again, we're dealing with averages here. It's a statistical model that we're building to value all the properties. If you hire a fee appraiser, his whole function in doing the appraisal is on that one piece of property he is looking at. Whereas when Martins and Arnie and I are out doing our inspections and looking at everything, we're looking at the whole borough. We're dealing with generally what's happening within the borough, what classes of properties are changing, where's the most of the sales, where is the market difference. But again, the sales and the information that we come up with is based on sales within Petersburg, and we're using that information to come up with our estimated changes.
Any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Member Kinsinger.
Yes, Mike, I got actually two questions. The first one is, do you do much on the ground checking of properties? And second, how do you really know the value of property, since when a person sells a property, they don't have to disclose the sales price?
Yes, we do. We're required by our contract to go around and look at all the properties. We try to get around and see everything within a 3-year cycle in doing the inspections. We're actually doing better than that on the number of properties we look at. To answer your second question, you notice that I said that the sales that we used were sales that we were able to confirm, and we confirm those sales with every source that we can find. We call up buyers, sellers, we look at deeds of trust, we look at listing information, we talk to anybody that we can to get the information that we can confirm to see where the sale price is.
Thank you.
And actually, one of the hardest, this is just a follow-up, I apologize for continuing on. One of the hardest jobs is confirming the sales. We've, in Petersburg, we send out flyers. Staff, Shannon sends out a letter we get a deed of trust in, we know that there's a sale, we know who the buyer is, we know who the seller is from the deeds. We send out letters to those people and ask them for their comments on the sale. What did you buy it for? What did you sell it for? We actually have a portion in there that goes, well, was there anything included? Sometimes we'll get a sale that they'll say, yep, I paid $100,000 for it, but I actually got a boat and a motor and a trailer with it, and some other personal property, and I valued that personal property at X number of dollars. So sending out the flyers for information has been extremely helpful in getting more accurate information for our assessed values. There's nothing to be said about, or enough can't be said about having too much information. The more we get, the better job we can do. And if we get information on sales, we don't just raise that property. That sales information goes into the matrix and the analysis that we use for valuing all properties. So we don't pick on people that are honest enough or have the time to fill out the flyers to send us the information.
So Mike, I have a question for you. The ratio comparison, I guess you'd call it, of assessed value is 81% of the sales price on average in the Petersburg borough for residential property. So the suggestion is to raise the property tax by 15 to 18%, whatever it is. Does the state require your appraisal company, to set the assessed value within a certain percentage of the sales price of property? I mean, does that question make any sense?
Oh, absolutely. The Alaska statutes state that the assessed value should be 100% of fair market value. That's in the statutes, and I believe it's in the municipal code also. And that's a transaction between a willing seller and a willing buyer. In real life, the Department of Commerce and Economic Development and the State Assessor's Office realizes that because we're not a full disclosure state, and because there's so much diversity between different styles of property within all of our communities. In other words, we're not dealing with a 500 home subdivision in Anaheim, California, where there's 3 house models, and that's the only difference is those 3 houses, where we've got individuals building different homes. They realize that it's almost impossible to get to 100% of fair market value. And so the state assessor has said they'd like to see us as close to 90% as we can get. In the times where we have such dramatic changes in property value is going on right now, in part caused by COVID and the activity in the market, they're more lenient on that. But there is a guideline that says, you try to be as close to 100% as you can get. I talked briefly about the COD, which is the difference between the median price on both sides of it. And if you're at 100% and you've got a 15% COD, you're saying that 15% of the sales are going to be over 100% of fair market value. If you're at 90% and still have a 15% COD, you're saying that 5% of your sales would be over 100% of fair market value, statistically speaking. And it goes on the other side also. In the market as it is right now, we try to keep our CODs around 10%. So that, when we do the statistical analysis, we're not going that much over 90% of fair market value, and we're definitely not going over 100% of fair market value. And that analysis has been acceptable for the state, and the people at the state assessor's office that review our work have agreed upon.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Any other questions? Thank you for your presentation today, and we'll see how many appeals pop up here.
Well, I'm sure we'll have a few, but like always, we'll make an appointment and try to talk to everybody that appeals.
I'll give you a call. So, thank you again. So next item, under report of other officers, it's Southeast Alaska Power Agency report, Vice Mayor and SEPA Board Member Lynn and Utility Director and SEPA Board Member Hagerman will report on a recent SEPA meeting. Member Lynn.
Thank you. I'm going to break this into a couple parts. But first of all, I want to pass around, we spent $14 million about 2 years ago for the submarine cable that we put in. And what I'm going to pass around here is, this is a cross section of that submarine cable. And what's really interesting is that each one of these carries one phase of cable. So all three phases are in the one cable. Whereas the cables that are existing down here, each one laid separately has one phase in it. So there's been quite a difference in technology. But 1 foot of this weighs over 40 pounds. And so I'm going to pass that around. You can look at the armoring around, you can look at the armoring inside of that. But the technology is quite impressive. And I'll pass it around. You can pass it to the back when you're done.
Doctor, is the copper colored?
Yes, yes.
That's it.
It's copper, yes. And with that, Carl, I'll let you, if you would, take the main report, and then Carl and I both have some comments that we'd like to add at the end of this.
Thank you. The board did select Robert Seidman as the new CEO, replacing Trey Actison, pending negotiations of a contract, of course. Mr. Seidman has been the Director of Engineering and Technical Service for the agency for the past 8 years. Some of his past accomplishments include synchronizing of turbines for efficiency and longer-term life, development of highly detailed annual operations plan to move power over the Swan-Tyee intertie among Petersburg, Wrangell, and Ketchikan to maximize water use and storage, development of a model to more accurately predict runoff and storage within the reservoirs. He's done a great job, and majority of the board feels that he's going to be a great fit moving forward. He knows the system and the agency very well, and we feel he's going to do a great job. The board also discussed coming issues, including relicensing of both Swan and Tyee lakes, the need for more power in terms of more kilowatts versus kilowatt hours, upgrading and replacement of equipment, finances and potential funding opportunities through the infrastructure legislation and future staffing needs. No decisions were made except to schedule a discussion of organization needs and skills at the next board meeting. During the December 2022 meeting, the board authorized a study to look at our long-term power needs for the 3 communities. The acting CEO reported the first draft of that study is due to the board by the summer meeting. The conclusions and recommendations from this study are very important. Our local power usage is increasing at about 3% annually, Ketchikan reporting being a little higher, and the study will set the table for many long-term planning efforts of the agency. I have actually a call scheduled with the consultant this week to talk about Petersburg's growth. Power sales in the 3 communities were higher than estimated during the last 2 months, January and February, I should say. Condition owed to lower temperatures and generally increasing loads. Hopefully we can bank some of that revenue and delay any increases to wholesale power rates. The winter reservoir drawdown is well underway. Low to nil lake inflows during freezing conditions and snowpack development do not keep up with the generation, and the lakes draw down as a result, meaning that the lake level drops. However, this year we are in great position because the lake levels were full at the start of winter, and neither Swan or Tyee Lake should be in danger of hitting draft limits before the warmer weather hits and increased inflows start up. Almost all the project cost estimates the board approved in FY 22 and FY 23 budgets are coming in at least 1/4 to 1/2 higher than engineer estimates. The board has convened several times since the beginning of the year to look at and improve cost increases and equipment delays. This is an alarming trend in the construction industry, but there is little relief in sight. So the board has approved budget increases as necessary to keep momentum going on important projects and operations. The board did begin a discussion of grid resiliency, mostly prompted by the acting CEO. That term captures a lot of different aspects, including increases of power production for the 3 communities, new projects, protection of the grid from cyber attack, recovery from natural disasters, much like the recent slide on Metcalf Island, monitoring for equipment and cable failure, taking care of peak loads, and more. The subject will be back on the summer agenda and some action initiated. Resiliency is a term that is key in the infrastructure legislation that will hopefully lead to some funding for many projects. The need to install a 3rd turbine at Tyee was discussed by the board with no decisions made yet. Once a decision is made to install a 3rd turbine, the staff reports it'll take a minimum 5 years before any output is realized. The board did tour the Tyee Lake Power Plant, had a chance to observe the many provisions for the 3rd turbine that are already in place. Past planning and work will help shorten the time frame to install and will reduce costs and enable quick integration into the existing transmission system.
Thank you. Couple comments to follow up on that. That grid, the load study that we're talking about, the board authorized about a year ago, looks out about 10 years to see what our power needs in the 3 communities are going to be. And that's due out, as Carl said, in June as first part of it. And that's really important because the power requirements of the 3 communities are significantly increasing. Last winter and the year before, there was at least 3 to 5 to 7 days that we maxed out all the power SEPA could produce. And so the communities have to pick up the difference, or if we were to go down, they have to be able to pick up whatever's the community would have had. So one of the things, we had on our agenda was to add a new generator at Scal Bay, and when we put the bonding out, and because of our Crystal Lake costs that went up so high, we weren't able to do that. And I thank our assembly for putting that back on the list because we really need that. There is if we're increasing 3% a year some of our other communities are even higher, we're going to need that generator because we will not be able to maintain the power before we can bring new power either from Tyee or another development online. We really do need that facility. I have one other comment is that I think the grid resiliency discussion was excellent from the standpoint that the infrastructure bill has quite a number of pieces related to it. Our new CEO or tentative CEO has now kind of aligned some of our projects with what's in that infrastructure bill. And I think there's some chance we may be able to get some, but the board itself has a lot of work to do, not only to bring ourselves up, to be able to go back and look at some of the costs and where we're going from there. There's a lot of work yet to be done. And with that, unless you have questions for me, I'll turn it over to Carl because we need to relate that to our own situation here.
Yeah, so the SEPA is facing a lot of the same things that each member community is, of course. As I mentioned in the main report, there's the ongoing discussion of kilowatts versus kilowatt hours. We spilled over 50,000 megawatt hours from our lakes this last year. And so that is a lot of power that was unused. So that kind of leads you down the path of, well, we don't need another project. We're spilling all this power. At the same time, in the wintertime, we have the peaks that Bob talked about where we don't have enough power. It's a timing issue. If we had our peaks in the summertime, when we had excess power, we'd probably be okay. For some situations, but it all leads us towards the agency, towards developing another project and getting that resiliency up so that we don't have to burn diesel in the wintertime when we do max out the system for winter peaks. And the summertime, we can use those kilowatt hours, the ones that we're spilling now and more. We've got some really big issues coming down the line that are increasing our loads. Beneficial electrification, which is our EVs, electric vehicles. That's a big thing that's coming our way. Dock electrification, powering up cruise ships when they dock, and potentially the new state ferry that's supposed to be all electric. You know, that's got to come from somewhere. And also, what's the other one? I have a problem here. Keep my heat pumps. Heat pumps are, we've been incentivizing heat pumps in Petersburg for a long time to try to get people to stay away from electric boilers, and it's worked. We've got a lot of heat pumps in Petersburg. Those incentive programs haven't taken place in Wrangell or Ketchikan yet, but they will be starting up. And so that's going to increase loads on the system as a whole. Anyway, these trends that are coming down the pike, really pushing the agency to make some big changes, and it will benefit all of us. The standby situation, I again want to reiterate what Bob said about moving the Scabby generator up our capital project list. That's really important, and I really do appreciate that. We're working on getting that together. Locally, it's been historically standby power has been a local issue. There was some discussions among the board that maybe that doesn't have to be a local issue, and a future standby power could be handled in some way by the agency. So we're keeping our ears open to that. The feeling of cooperation among the board members is pretty high right now, so that could be a possibility. It all comes back to resiliency and the need for the grid to be, strong in all our communities. The power sales agreement that Ketchikan has with Metlakatla, and potentially someday an agreement that we may have with Cake, pushes all these issues into importance. And hopefully the new CEO, he's got his finger on some of this the federal money to achieve some really big things, and hopefully the board can help them get there.
Thanks. Any questions? Member Mucci.
Thank you. That's a good report. About the long-term power needs for the three communities, what do you use to determine what those long-term needs are?
Contractors is taking a look at the things like Carl was talking about, the road electrification, ship electrification. I was in a conference here a couple of weeks ago and saying, well, we need electric ships. Well, the problem with that is where do they get their power from, and so all that is as part of that load study I was talking about earlier, which should be out, first draft of it in June. It includes population and, a lot of different factors. And I don't know all of them off the top of my head, but those are all included.
Thank you.
Other questions? Member Marsh.
Yes, thank you. One question that I have with the electrification of the harbors and the electric ships and vehicles and such, including a new harbor, is the SEPA board acknowledging the emphasis of we've got to have more housing, more residential growth? Is that going to be able to keep pace with the growth that's projected for SEPA to do all this electrification? I'm wondering if the growth of the communities, the demand for more housing is going to outpace what SEPA can produce even more so.
The answer is, are we going to be able to catch up? It worries me right now. I don't know the answer to that question. When we bring that new, I'm hoping that we can make a decision to move forward for that third turbine. There's a lot of what ifs and and fors, to look at, but even if we do that, we can take care of the peaks, but it really doesn't help us for the long term. So I think we have to look at new sources, and we've looked at those over the past 4 or 5 years. And I think there's some that are really close to coming on, coming forward at this point. But I agree with your comment. The other question I have in my own mind is when you look at the infrastructure bill and what it was emphasizing with more electric vehicles, more electric boats, more electric things. The problem is that we bring all those things online, but yet we can't provide the power to run them. And that's one of the worries of that we've been wrestling with as a board.
Couple things. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple things I'll add is that the load study is really about finding the right time to bring on another project. And so they don't want to build a project too soon because then you have power that is not being utilized. But if they wait too long, then we burn more diesel, so that it's really the sweet spot. And so this load growth study is really focused on trying to find that right time to do it. 5 years to develop the third turbine at Tyee is actually a relatively short amount of time for a power project. And so that's a good thing. We've kind of got that in our back pocket. Hopefully the construction trends and the, supply chain issues don't, shoot that out of the water. But it's, again, finding that sweet spot on when to bring that power online is the key. And so the consultant is talking to all the member communities, all the utilities, and trying to trend out the growth that we're seeing, historically in the last 10 years, and looking forward, projecting not only load growth, but population as well, and trying to factor that in. Is you have people, you need power, and all these other trends that we talked about tonight, electrification, they all enter into that. So we're really hoping, I'm hoping anyway, for the consultant to do a good job on considering all those things and presenting that to the board so that we can define when the right time is to pull the trigger and get some of these projects online.
Quick question, I guess for Mr. Hagerman. Is the borough can reduce its power usage during times when we're traditionally bumping up against, our limits for our capacity? Is that, is it just a matter of having to heat this many houses and that's just kind of what it is?
Conservation is actually very hard to achieve. You can put out the call to conserve, but you're a very electrically dependent society right now, and that's not going to change. So it makes perfect sense, and it would be great if we could put out the call to conserve and that we could drop our use by 25% and not have to burn any diesel, when we get 10 degrees outside. Unfortunately, a lot of people use electricity for their heat pumps, for their electric heat. And so it's really not going to work out that well. Of course, we don't know exactly the ratio or anything like that, but it's very difficult to do that. The heat pumps do make a difference as far as conversions to electric boilers. Electric boilers are very efficient. Heat pumps are 3 times as efficient, and they still use power, but you can get more heat out of the same amount of electricity that you're using. And so we're really pushing people in that way. That's a very good question, but unfortunately, I don't think there's an easy answer.
Yeah, thanks. It was just occurred to me, you mentioned that there were programs incentivizing heat pumps, and I wondered if at some point, an incentive program may be less costly than, using diesel for extended periods of time. But yeah, it sounds like it is a complicated question, but thanks for your answer.
Any other questions? Member Newman?
So if they install a third turbine, and I know that the drawdown on the lakes is a big issue. I mean, a third turbine's gonna, put out a third more power, but also draw down the water a third quicker. How does that all play out?
Potentially,
Good.
it can draw it down. Of course, it can draw it down quicker. But I think what they are focused on is to have that turbine and not have it. You don't have to have it either 100% or 0%. You can turn it on partially. Just having that spinning having that turbine spinning provides what's called spinning reserve. It's a resiliency strategy that is very good for the system as a whole. Turbines at Tyee actually stabilize the frequency on the system a lot more than the Swan turbines, different type of turbine. And so having a third one spinning, but not putting out a tremendous amount of energy really helps the system as a whole, and may not be using the same amount of water as it would if it was putting out 12 megawatts.
If I can add to that. In the last 5 years, the staff has done an outstanding job of being able to move power back and forth over the line between the communities. And so what they do is when, for instance, Tyee gets close to spilling, what they'll do is they'll put all the turbines at Tyee online. And so they keep drawing down that while they're still filling the other reservoir, okay? Or vice versa. And so they've been doing, I think, an excellent job of utilizing as much of that water as they can, so we can keep the storage in those reservoirs as high as we possibly can, simply by shifting things back and forth. And because of the SDI, the line, we can do that, which we couldn't do before. And that was what done, that was 10, 15 years ago.
Probably longer than
Longer.
we think.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was an excellent choice when the crew did that one.
Any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Member Kinsinger.
Yes, I know it's a complicated agreement between Petersburg and Wrangell and SEPA that originally occurred in reference to Tyee. So how does adding a third turbine at Tyee affect that agreement?
That's a great question, and it's a question that we did ask in Wrangell recently. So the project, the Tyee project, is dedicated to the north end, which is Wrangell and Petersburg. And so adding a third turbine will still be dedicated to Petersburg. However, we generally can't use all the power out of Tyee in Wrangell and Petersburg in the course of a year anyway. So essentially, the extra power produced by a third turbine, most of it will likely go to Ketchikan as additional power to help them out. And we're all part of the same agency. And so it does, if it helps Ketchikan, it helps us. They've actually supported some big projects on the north end that were beneficial for us a lot more than they were for Ketchikan. And so the Tyee turbine will benefit Ketchikan quite a bit. But as we said, it will eliminate the need for us to burn diesel in the wintertime when we have high peaks.
I would add one other part to that is that adding that also helps keep the costs down for all three communities. Because when we add that, and we can provide more power by moving water around, like we talked earlier, that'll help keep some of the costs down so we don't have to have more cost raises quite as quickly. So yeah, I'm quite supportive of that.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks again for the report. Now we're on to a report from the Local Emergency Planning Committee, and that is from Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I don't have much to add to the report that's in there, but the LEPC met on February 28th at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and those notes are pretty extensive about what we talked about. Two things to be aware of: we're working on rolling out some 7-day information on 7-day emergency preparation kits, just so in case power goes out or landslides are going out. And there's also a note there about a culvert replacement at 11 Mile, and that's going to cause the Midcoff Highway to be closed later on this summer as they replace a culvert at 7 Mile. So I don't know, I think that's about all, unless Aaron has something, or if you have any questions, I'd be happy to see what I can answer. Thank you.
Mostly this meeting was tailored towards getting our open environmental advisory chair seated. Thank you, Tim, for putting up for that role. And the other part of this last meeting was trying to get the LEPC into some sort of regular business so that we have reasons to continue to meet and making that effective, kind of bringing it back up from out of COVID, where it just kind of got absorbed by the EOC. So we talked about what we want to do as far as public outreach, getting information out there to the public related to what to do in emergency, things like that. Trying to be preemptive rather than reactive. And in some of that, we usually towards the end, we do we go around amongst the various members and ask if they have any like in-house projects such as the culvert replacement that Member Mucci spoke of. They are going to replace that culvert. It sounds like sometime later this summer. They will have to shut down the highway in order to do it because it goes all the way across. Barry had spoke briefly on they're working on a plan for it, whether they shut down the whole highway and just try and get it done as fast as they can, or they try and let traffic through, or that's really up to DOT, but he just kind of shared that with the group. So, but those were our main focuses. We're trying to start getting information out of there. And then once I get caught up on some of the emergency planning stuff and can bring drafts back to that committee, we'll start reviewing them. And that's the all hazards plan and the what is the disaster response plan, which will probably be superseded by emergency operations plan. Well, think of it as all hazards is mitigating disasters before they happen in the borough. And the DRP, soon to be EOP, will be what the borough does in response to a disaster.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, that brings us to the mayor's report. Again, there's no written mayor's report this week, but one thing I would like to just add under the mayor's report is I went to the Guns and Hoses chili cook-off on, I believe it was the 10th, and I couldn't believe how well attended it was, and it was a great event. Congratulations to the PD again for winning, but I sampled all the chilies. I think there was like 18 of them, and I don't know if that was such a good idea for my stomach, but it was all very tasty, and I would recommend attending the one next year. It was a good event. And with that being said, I'll turn it over to the manager for his report.
Thank you, sir. Parks and Rec, along with the Petersburg School District Maintenance Technician Aaron Bueller, installed the new pool covers over spring break. School District and Parks and Rec are hoping to be able to work together to add the community center sewer line repairs to the deed capital project list. I'm not sure that can happen at this point, but we're working on it. We did receive the biddable documents for the sewer line project. Estimates are about 440,000. So if you include contingencies, it's probably pretty close to $500,000 to do that project. So we'll be thinking about that. Pat Blair is submitting all needed paperwork to start to create the Friends of the Bike Park and gain nonprofit status. We've got open volleyball on Mondays and Wednesday nights, and it's been seeing a whole lot of turnout, trying to spread the word for water volleyball and water polo on Monday and Thursday nights, respectively. Over 100 people of all ages participated in the library's Winter Reading Challenge, logging over 65,000 reading minutes and doing philanthropic activities that help build our community. 2 winners will be selected. They will be able to give a $500 gift certificate to a local nonprofit of their choice. The program is sponsored by the Friends of Petersburg Libraries. Kathy Russo, master basket weaver from Ketchikan, will be giving an artist's slideshow and presentation, followed by a 3-day basket weaving class in late March. That may be already happening, actually. The library currently has several of her amazing baskets on display, and this program is funded by the Alaska Community Foundation's Healthy Communities Grant and the Petersburg Library Art Education Endowment. Upcoming programs and events at the library include estate planning with lawyer Liz Smith, which was on March 17th, baby massage and mama care with Jessica Toth of the Healing Hands Chinese Therapeutic Massage, Rainforest Riders with Orrin Pearson, Maker's Space for Kids, which is the 9th and the 6th of March. Stories in Motion is every Thursday, and the Friends of the Library book sale is April 1st. ADEC has informed the water utility that will be required to complete a lead service line inventory by late 2024. So it'll be a big, substantial effort, and will document every water service line in the community, both private or public. The department's professional services budget will reflect the hiring of consultants to assist with this endeavor, although overall effort and costs are not known at this point. Wastewater Department has received a technical memorandum produced by P&D engineers to lay out several design alternatives for the Pump Station 4 project. The department is seeking a proposal from P&D to develop final design and construction documents. On a related note, DEC has accepted a funding questionnaire from the utility for loan increase to the Pump Station 4 project and has indicated that we may start the loan request process. Additional documents required for this loan request will be coming to the assembly soon. DC has issued comments in regard to the department's wastewater discharge, water quality certification forms. We will be required to provide additional information on treatment alternatives and costs. The Blind Slough FERC license amendment still has not been approved. Okay, we're on a day-by-day basis trying to figure that out. And subsequently, you can't start construction out there until we get that permit in. Power and Light recently requested approval of pre-construction activities from the Portland Regional Office so that the contractor may start mobilization and material delivery to the site. Senate delegations have contacted the FERC office in DC on our behalf, and we are hopeful that we will get project approvals soon. The effort to convert to AMI smart meters continues with the recent install of large commercial meters in the system. Staff continues to plan for meter replacements, although the supply chain for these meters is highly strained and lead times actually keep getting longer. The department is working with our selected consultant to coordinate the next Part 12D periodic inspection with FERC, and NC Machinery is committed to the first 2 weeks of April to complete the rebuild on the CAT 398 generator. Tour ship schedule has firmed up with 112 stops, so a few more than we had last year. And the South Harbor dredge has been suspended until environmental windows open back up. Approximately half the dredge materials have been removed, with the worst areas in the egress in and out of the South Harbor opened up. During the last set of minus tides, the water line in the Middle Harbor was damaged, causing staff to realize sediment coming out of Hammer and Slough has built up considerably over the winter. We've contacted Corps of Engineers to apply for emergency permit to remove the sediment, and through the discussion was able to get the same authorization that was used in 2012 in the same area through the Corps' nationwide permit number 35. This allows communities to dredge existing harbor basins. We've worked with Rock and Road to establish quantities and a cost estimate for removing about 1,600 cubic yards from the Middle Harbor and disposing of it at the Public Works mud dump. Estimate is part of the proposed supplemental budget. We'll talk about a little bit. Mountain View Assisted Living is full. Derek is working with Medicaid to recover some past reimbursed bills. And as part of an OSHA inspection at Assisted Living, we are ordering an additional Hoyer lift and an eye wash station. Police Department won the second annual chili cook-off, although Fire Department has been claiming a faulty voting machine and asking for a recount. So Officers Wachter and Akins attended the sexual assault response team training in Anchorage. And we're waiting on install and training dates from the vendor on the digital fingerprint machine. We had our tech vendor out here and they've done everything on our end. We just have to wait for the vendor themselves to come out and do everything. That's it.
Any questions of the manager? Member Vici.
Sure, thank you. I have a couple here. On the first page of your report, I guess the city manager, you're talking about the ADEC. It's going to be doing a lead service line inventory by
Yes.
late 24, and it also says it's going to be doing both private and public. So what's the process for going into my house and seeing if I've got lead pipes in my house?
I don't know that they'll be going into your house, but they will be looking and asking probably survey questions. I mean, Carl, do you know how they expect us to do that?
I'm not really sure what they're thinking as far as a process. It is hard to wrap my head around in our small community. This is going to happen in every town and city in the country. And so it's really yet to be determined. I've got some contacts that I'm talking to see how they're gonna approach their communities. But it'll be probably as much work we can do in the office to verify, what service line materials are. Once we run out of that information, then it's gonna be field surveys.
Thank you. The other two here, one of them has to do with the wastewater department going for with P and D to lay out several design alternatives for pump station 4.
Hmm.
So will those designs take into the account possible subdivisions or roads that be going through pump station 4 to access?
That was some of the reason why we asked P and D to do that. Carl, I'm not as up to speed on that.
That's correct.
Yeah.
The alternatives that were presented by PND do allow for some gravity sewer to be installed in some undeveloped right of ways back on Hungry Point, which would facilitate, some subdivision, at least part of a subdivision in the future. And so that has been developed, and that is the direction that we're going. It doesn't give us as much gravity sewer, for the whole right of way. Some of it's going to be force main and some of it's going to be gravity, but it does open up some lots for gravity service.
Thank you. And the last question I had was about the AMI smart meters. And I ask this question every time I see it on here, but are we eventually going to smart meters on residential homes, or are we still going to be sending somebody out to?
Through the mayor, yes, the answer is eventually we will have smart meters everywhere. But as Carl mentioned, number one, we can only handle so much at a time. But a big part of it is lead time a year. I mean, 8 months.
Quite that much, but 6 to 8 months.
Yeah. It's just, it's a big problem in that sense, so.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions of the manager? Thank you, Manager Giesbrecht. That brings us to unfinished business. The first item there is ordinance 2023-03, an ordinance proposing amendments to the home rule charter of the Petersburg Borough to allow borough employees, including employees working at the Petersburg Medical Center and Petersburg School District, to serve on certain boards and commissions, and directing that the proposed charter amendments be submitted to the qualified voters of the borough. This is the second reading. I'd entertain a motion to approve this ordinance in its second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by member Yuki, seconded by member Marsh. Discussion. Member Marsh.
Yes, so after last meeting's discussion, with the emphasis of potential conflicts of interest already being in the charter that would protect such conflicts of interest or protect the assembly or the borough from things that might not make sense, I might not square up. I have reconsidered, and I am still not content with this. And I'm going to toss a theoretical out there, which is that if you had, say, for example, three employees of the school district sitting on the borough assembly, when it comes time for making appropriations to the school board or to the school district, I see a huge conflict of interest, and it would be a shame that three of the assembly members would be denied the privilege to vote. So this one doesn't make sense yet to me.
I can see your concern, but if you read the description below it, if adopted in three readings, then approved by the borough voters, it will allow borough medical center and school district employees to serve on certain local boards and commissions, but not including those which directly administer their employment. And one example is a borough employee may serve on the school board or hospital board, but may not run for assembly. So, I think it would be covered. I could see your concern, and I would hope if there was a situation that they would recuse themselves from voting if they're going to vote for a raise, for instance. So, any other discussion? It's the second reading. This will be the public hearing on earlier this meeting, and there will be one more reading at the meeting of April 3rd. So if there's no more discussion, will the clerk please call a roll?
David,
Yes.
Mark, Donna,
No.
Bob,
Yes.
Scott. Jeff,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Okay, the second reading of ordinance 2023-03 passes with a 6-1 vote with member Marsh opposed. That brings us to new business. And this is ordinance 2023-04. This is an ordinance adjusting the fiscal year 2023 budget for known changes. I'd entertain a motion to approve this ordinance in its first reading.
So moved.
Okay, and I'd ask the manager before the meeting if he could go through this and read it and give a brief explanation so the people listening would, because there's 12 different changes to the proposed 2023 budget. So Member Giesbrecht, if you do that, please, that would be
Thank you,
nice.
sir. So this is ordinance 2023-04, and this is what we call a supplemental budget. So this comes up when costs or in some cases revenue during the year exceed or what we put into the budget. Auditors like the budget to be at the end of the year to match, and so we will do these periodically as needed. This is a bigger one than normal, so I'll just go through all 12 of these items, give you what I know about it. We've got some staff here that could probably add in more if the assembly has questions, and we'll go from there. So, the first one is a transfer of 50% of general fund surplus from last year to the property development fund for an amount of $77,277. This is an example of a positive. At the end of last year, the general fund revenues exceeded expenses by over $155,000. The budget policy document says half of that goes into the property development fund. So this is moving it from the general fund to property development fund. Transfer of $65,432 from the property development fund to the community center sewer line project. This is something the assembly approved. This was to do the engineering on that sewer line project, which was not budgeted prior to the year when we put the budget together. Transfer of $21,165.46 from the hydro substation project to the Line Slough Hydro project. This is actually just merging to an old capital project that was out there with some money in it into the big hydro project. So it was all in one spot. Transfer of $12,916 from the wastewater department reserves to the Ira 2 street project. This is basically inflation is what it amounts to. And there's a couple of them that are going to be like that. Prices that we were budgeted that now are more expensive than we expected. Transfer of $170,000 from the electric department reserves to the diesel plant fuel budget line. This is a combination of the some cold weather increases in diesel costs and the landslide where we ran diesels for an extended period of time. We need to make sure there's enough cushion there when we go to do maintenance where we run the whole town on mostly diesel. We have the budget there to support it. Let's see, sorry. Increase the general fund attorney budget from $90,000 by $90,000 due to unanticipated legal expenses from the Pittarossi, Kerr and Koenig's lawsuits. So 3 lawsuits and about 60, where is it? 60 something thousand in costs on those lawsuits that were again unanticipated going into the year. Sorry, lost my place. There we go. Increase the South Harbor dredging project budget of $635,000. This is due to the countering that very hard blue clay, and we share some of the costs with the Corps, but this is our portion. And again, unanticipated, we're still under the overall project budget. Increase to the wastewater professional services budget of $35,000 to cover the hire of HDR engineering to help us completing the DEC forms for the 301H secondary water treatment. This is something that we have been afraid of, but we need their help to fill in this application and make sure that we're get them to do what we want them to do. Transfer of $189,000 to the new Middle Harbor dredging. This is what I talked about in my report. This is related to silt and debris coming down the slough into the Middle Harbor, and it's actually caused some water line damage, and we need to get it out of there. There's another budget item or agenda item here to do a sole source. So we can have a local contractor get that dredged out of here before we get to a point where environmental issues shut us down, where we can't do any dredging when the salmon come in, and so we could get it done before then. And so this, but again, it was an unexpected increase of 20,000 to the fire engine motor pool budget line. This is kind of a combination, and Chris or Aaron, you may have to help me with this one. Some of this is expenses that were budgeted last year that did not get spent because of supply chain issues. And now we're moving them into this year, but some of it is also increases in costs on some of the minor stuff related to the fire. Did I get most of that right? Chris or Aaron?
Yeah, so essentially there was a delay, between when we budgeted and paid for the truck and when the truck's gonna get here. There was a budget year in between. Normally, any funds that are left over in the vehicle budget, if there's incidental things that need to be purchased, those, and there's budget left, then that's what would be used. In this case, the truck budget of 650,000, basically expired. We had spent 596,000 and change of that. And, so we'll still be under budget buying these additional things. And it's normally something where we would have had those funds available, but because of the extended procurement time, the budget turned over and that money was no longer there. So that's why we're essentially putting that back in to allow the fire department to purchase some of these things they need for the new truck.
Part of this, these items that are bought are getting sent down to a third party located somewhere in Oregon. The truck's built in Florida and it's shipped all the way across the US to a receiver in Oregon. They look over the truck, make sure there's no final flaws, and they'll actually install some of the equipment that we put in there. These are things like the radios, the hand lights, the tablets for reporting, dispatch, things like that. And we've already paid for the services to have this put in. We just need to get them the materials before the truck gets up here. Otherwise, we paid for something that we didn't use.
For 11 is increase of 80,000 to the streets department motor pool O&M budget line due to increased parts cost and unanticipated necessary repairs. Chris, there's some detail behind this that the assembly would probably like to hear.
Sure. I did a little number crunching just to pull a few numbers. For example, we had, I believe, 218,000 budgeted for motor pool O&M for the streets department. You kind of anticipate that there will be unanticipated repairs. So, there's a little bit of that built into the budget already. In this last year, though, we just had way more unanticipated things occur that required a lot of maintenance expense. And I'll just run through a few here. I added up some numbers today. So one of the big ones was plows and rigging of plows. We had, two very old snow plows on our primary plow trucks. The trucks are from the early 90s and the plows predate the trucks as far as we can tell. We had one of those fail. We managed to put, one good one together from the two carcasses. And then we replaced one plow, which was about $30,000 or $35,000 worth of cost. And we had to, between rigging the new plow and then combining the old plows and putting them on the other truck. We also got a new plow for the grader. So we had some expense there to essentially rig that new plow onto the grader. So all of that stuff that I just described, the replacing of the plow, all the repairs and the rigging and so forth, came to about $48,000. So that was quite a lot of expense that we didn't really anticipate. The landslide related expenses that occurred last year. You know, we had that, I guess you want to call it a secondary slide, during the project to repair the culvert in the Public Works yard. That was everything, you know, we had a lot of equipment impacts from that, everything from pop tires to, hydraulic hoses, tailgate failures on the trucks. It just caused a lot of maintenance that would not have otherwise been necessary. That added up to about 29,000. During the year, one of our loaders needed a brake job. That's a pretty intensive project. We had to bring in a cat tech for that. That was about a $10,000 bill. We had a transmission failure on one of our dump trucks, one of our larger trucks. This was actually the truck that we used for our primary sand truck. So we had to uninstall the sander, put it on the other truck and send this truck off to Juneau to get worked on. That was $11,000. We had some sander problems this winter, some pretty major problems. So we essentially had to rebuild both of our sanders, the large one and the small one, the backup. That was 13,000 and change. And then we had to rebuild one of the stabilizers on our backhoe, which was 5,500 roughly. So just the things I just described is $118,000 worth of work. And that's not a complete list. That's just some of the things that have happened in the last year that have resulted in extra cost. I'm pretty sure our fuel budget is way over. I did not have a chance to pull those numbers together before the meeting. So when we put the supplemental budget together, we essentially looked at what historically we have spent on streets department, motor pool O&M for the months of March, April, May, and June. And it's basically $80,000 is our historic, you know, over the past 5 years, if you average it out. And so that's what we went with for the supplemental. You know, we think we'll be able to get to the end of the year with that amount added. So does that explain? Is that enough detail? Sorry, it might have been a little
No,
more
that's
than you
okay.
needed. Yeah.
Like everything else, we keep seeing, you know, I think at one point we were looking at tires for one of the pieces of heavy equipment and the price tag on the tires were, you know, 2/3 to more than we'd paid before. We're seeing that pretty much in every department when it comes to, you know, supplies, I guess, just generically. Number 12, the last on the list was increase of $10,000 each to the motor pool patrol unit 54 and 96. These budget items due to the increased cost of chassis and vehicle uplifts. And those are the 2 police cars. They're still on their way. I don't know if you have details on what those upfits are, but it's just basically stuff that we do to the cars to make them police cars. And prices have gone up. I mean, we're looking at Chris, is a year on both of those or 1.5 years on both of those? Or, I mean, I'm trying to think.
Yeah,
of the-
so because of the extended delay in procurement, which is unfortunately something we're seeing with a lot of motor pool stuff. You know, one of these police units, for instance, we issued a purchase order in 2021. We don't have the car yet. You know, you get hit with contract increases. You know, they'll give you a price for that model year, but they're not going to honor that price when the model year changes and the price goes up. So some of this cost is just model years changing and the cost of the chassis going up. Some of it is freight costs, because of course freight costs continue to go up. A lot of it is the upfit cost, and basically just the cost of the parts to upfit the car. One thing we're seeing in motor pool, which is driving some of the extra cost across motor pool, not just in this instance, but we're seeing the cost of a lot of parts that, you know, they're in some cases double what they were a year or 2 ago. And that's obviously outpacing inflation, and we're not really sure why that's the case, but anybody who's bought parts for equipment has probably noticed that they're a lot more expensive than they used to be. So, that's a few of the things that are, driving, this budget increase. Is that, Steve, is that?
Yeah,
Explain
no,
it for
that's,
you.
thank you. very much.
Okay.
Okay, well, thanks
That's all
for,
12.
thanks for going through it and giving some explanation for each of them. And we're back on to the motion to approve this budget increase. So is there any discussion? Or any questions? Member Mucci?
Yeah, thank you. I have several questions regarding several of the items here. On the attorney fees, does this clear up the Peter Rossi thing?
To my knowledge, it does, through the mayor, I'm sorry. Yeah, yes, it does. We may get something from the insurance company at some point, leftover bills that they find, but we've been told this should be all of it.
On the fire engine, does that cost of the fire engine cover the cost of getting it to Petersburg?
I think the original budget, yeah, thanks, Aaron. Before I answer and have to eat my words.
Yes, so a lot of the stuff is actually to be shipped down to Oregon to be put on the truck, to be shipped up with the truck. The only thing that we're still playing with is included in this is the snow tires for this rig. They, until you actually have the final set designs, you can't go out and just go buy any old rim or tire because it might not fit. So what we have talked with the builder, that you might throw these buy them in Florida, put them on the truck in the hose bed, because it'll be empty, and ship it up with the truck, and that'll save us about $1,000 to $1,500 in just shipping of those tires alone. So. But yes, the shipping's already paid for. They're all gonna come up with the truck.
Thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Any other questions by assembly members? So I have one question, Mr. Cotta, when you were talking about the one dump truck that had to be shipped out to get a new transmission. So any project that's of that size, we don't have the mechanical ability here to do it in Petersburg. I know we have a new lift up there, the new shop, right? To lift the trucks off the ground and everything, but it's still.
Yeah, this particular truck has been a problem child for a couple of years now. 2 out of the last 3 seasons, we have not been able to use it as our sand truck because it's had intermittent transmission problems. We did as much as we could do here. Our mechanics spent a lot of time on the phone with various places and various, international techs and trying to figure this out. And it turned out to be something that was, we felt that sending the truck out to a diesel specialist was the best course of action at this point. If I'd have known how much it was gonna cost, I might not have sent it. We are looking at getting rid of this truck in the next budget, just FYI, because it has not been very reliable and, the cost of maintaining the truck is pretty high compared to the value of the unit. It's working right now. It's working great. So it will serve for the time being, but, yeah, it just to let you know, there was some history there. It wasn't something where we just, okay, we've got a problem, let's just send the truck out and spend a lot of money on it. It was something where we had exhausted, locally, the resources that we could talk to, even, trying, like I said, to connect and consult with international techs over the phone. And it just was one of those things where we decided we needed to send it out, and they did resolve the problem.
Perfect. At least it's still working. Any other questions on this ordinance? Clerk, call roll.
Jeff,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes,
David.
Yes,
Thank you.
So if I've got I can confirm your vote as a Was that a no? Was that a yes? Okay, I didn't understand. Passes unanimously. Okay, we're going to the next item under new business, resolution 2023-03. This is a resolution approving the sole source procurement of contracting for the dredge and disposal of Middle Harbor spoils. If approved, resolution 2023-03 will authorize sole source issuance of accepting the proposal from Rock and Road for mobilization, removal and reinstallation of 7 stall floats, domestic water line repair and restall, and the dredge and disposal of approximately 1,600 cubic yards of dredge spoils delivered to the borough's mud dump for the prices of not to exceed $189,000. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by member Mucci, seconded by member Lim. And with the conversation I had with the harbor master, that, the dock, the head float that goes between the north and the south finger in the middle harbor actually goes dry on minus tide. So it's not only going to potentially damage the water line again and the floats. So I think it's an important project to have done. Was there any questions or discussion? Member Marsh?
2 things. Would you explain the sole source procurement term? And secondly, was this put out to bid? How was this awarded to this particular company? If
That's our job to award tonight, but yeah, but Manager Giesbrecht.
Through the mayor, so sole source is basically says we're not gonna bid it out. We're gonna
Okay.
go to one person and ask them to do the work. Generally, it's only done if there's nobody else that can do it, or somebody has very specific expertise that we're not gonna find anywhere else. In this case, it's like we needed this done in a hurry, and they had to have the right kind of equipment to be able to do it. Glow was able to get Rock and Road to give her a quick quote, and they're able to do it. Glow, what's the time frame? I can't remember it has to be done before the salmon come in.
Yeah, we want it done by, first of all, by March 15th for Fish and Game reasons. And we have a -3 coming up in the end of April, and we tore the water line out on a -2. So it's, and we did, just to clarify, we did run it by the other contractor and he was busy. He's thanked us for approaching him. So before we went to this, we talked to everybody.
Thank you.
When is the deadline again to have this soils removed by?
Well, if we could get it done by March or by April 15th, then Fish and Game will not go to NIMS and try and shut us down.
Oh, this is kind of time sensitive.
Be very time sensitive.
Any other discussion?
Did I answer your question, Donna?
Yes, thank you.
So that's where we're at. That's why one question I have, I guess, is does the harbor have the money, or we have the money to pay the $189,000 to the contractor before the third reading of our supplemental budget? Isn't that one of our items?
Yeah, yes, we do have the money to pay for it.
Now, if there's no other questions, will the clerk call the roll?
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jeff, David,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Mark.
Yes. Okay,
Thank
that resolution to dredge the harbor passes unanimously. Next item, assignment of Stikine Services Incorporated leases to Birchall Properties LLC. Kurt and Christie Birchall request approval of assignment of 2 leases the borough has with Stikine Services Incorporated to Birchall Properties LLC. The Stikine Services business was recently sold to Wes and Angela Davis, and the Birchalls would like to continue to lease the 2 Tideland properties under the new business's name. So it's just a technicality, but I'd entertain a motion to approve this lease transfer.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by member Mucci, seconded by member Lim. Discussion. Clerk call the roll.
David,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that lease will be transferred. Communications, we have received communications since, March 2nd of 2023. They're on today's agenda. You can find it at the borough's website. Like I say, at every meeting, we make a habit of not reading the communications that are sent to us. So they're there for your viewing. Item 17, assembly discussion items. There are none listed specifically, but, are there any assembly member comments? Member Mucci?
Yeah, thank you. With the streets, some of the streets in pretty tough shape and potholes showing up everywhere. Do we have a schedule for either filling potholes or fixing streets with potholes that seem to pop up regularly between the spring and the fall? Or
Through the mayor, we have to wait for the ground to start grading and doing street work. You know, Director Kata, you know, and prior to him, Director Hagerman, have talked about how in the heck can we do a better job on our streets, which basically means putting more money and more people on it. And so we don't have a plan other than we do what we normally do, which as soon as we can, the guys get out with the grader and start doing potholing and start doing, you know, grading these roads. You know, when we were in Juneau, we had a conversation with DOT about, you know, are they going to bring an asphalt plant here? Because it's a huge expense to mobilize and demobilize that. If the state's going to do a project, we try to piggyback on that. So we kind of stockpile some money, hoping that the state will do a job, and then we can jump in and say, hey, we want to have these streets asphalt. Well, the state's not coming anytime soon. They are going to do some chip seal. And I asked Chris to try to look and see it, you know, could we take advantage of that if in fact we can confirm that they're going to bring the equipment here to do chip sealing. But yeah, we are behind the 8 ball on road work. In some cases, we don't have the right equipment. A lot of it is just, you know, we don't have the money. It's a very expensive proposition to do asphalt. So anyway, that's
thank you.
not excuses, but how it is.
Thank you.
The other assembly members have comments this evening. Member Marsh?
I would request excusing myself for the next meeting, April 3rd. If I'm not actively fishing, I will participate. Otherwise, I would request to be excused.
Okay, yeah. Have fun down there, Craig. Any other assembly members have comments? Seeing none. Recognitions, any recognitions from assembly members or staff today? No, don't see any. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous every time.